Well, I got this problem, and this problem is not only mine, but this problem involves everybody who uses Whisper, the open source model released by OpenAI, which in my opinion is one of the best solutions for speech-to-text transcription, okay? It is used not only in Transcriber, the app that I produce, but in many other services and products all around the world. The first that comes to my mind is MacWhisper. That sometimes is something like my benchmark, okay? The problem is the way Whisper is architected. The way the Whisper is structured. And now I have a clearer vision on how this thing works and why it works this way, and why sometimes its behavior is not perfect and it produces something like hallucinations, or that's the topic of this show today, why it sometimes loses completely punctuation, okay? I'm Alex Racuglia and this is The Morning Rant, the show in which usually talk about my life as a software developer for video products during my telecommute from my home to the office. But today is Saturday and I'm going to the supermarket doing a little shopping because I have to prepare lunch for my family. I learned something about Whisper, and this explains why when you give something to translate, it took something like a half a minute before starting putting out the words or the tokens that it transcribed. Because Whisper works on batches of 30 seconds of audio. This means that it has to transcribe the first 30 seconds before starting putting out something, okay? And it works with 30 seconds. And given the fact that it's based on, I don't know if it's a large language model, but it's based on a language model, sometimes it needs a prompt just to get the context or the main words that can be used or that should be used on its transcription. And after the transcription, the tokens that were produced by the Whisper are re-injected into Whisper as a new prompt. And in this step, it loses the initial prompt because the prompt is just for the first 30 seconds transcription. And so if there's a transcription, maybe part of this first prompt can be re-injected, but after a bit, it can lose completely the origin of the transcription. And given the fact that this is a small large language model, you know, if you use something like ChatGPT-4 or GPT 4.5, you can have dozens of thousands of tokens that can be used as a context prompt. But for Whisper, the default prompt length is 224 tokens. It means something like 150 words, more or less. And so after the first 150 words, the first part of the prompt is being lost. I use the prompt to inject into Whisper the punctuation. I prepared a sentence with punctuation marks, with like periods, commas, semicolons, exclamation point, question mark. And given the fact that sometimes it passes a lot of time, and so a lot of the initial prompt is lost, sometimes, quite often, Whisper loses the punctuations and start producing walls of text, blocks, huge blocks of text, pages and pages of text without punctuation, without a comma, without a period, without anything. Everything is just a block of text. And this is a real problem because there's no solution to this, because there's no way with the actual model to re-inject the initial prompt. Up until 1 week ago, I developed a way of trying to minimize this kind of problems, because if there's an audio file with some pauses, I divided it into chunks, into blocks, into clusters or spoken audio, and give it to Whisper to analyze it singularly. Okay, you know, if you have 10 minutes audio and can be separated into 10 1-minute blocks, then the model and the execution is restarted each time for each block. But one user had a problem because he had an audio file, a 42 minutes audio file that was subdivided in 172 blocks, a lot of blocks. And the computation time for the transcription was very, very short, but the activation time, the setup process for each block took up something like 10, 20, 30 seconds. And so a 42-minute audio file took something like 4 hours to transcribe. By a performance point of view, was a pain. And so I started to compress this audio to eliminate all the pauses, so there were no hallucinations, during the almost silent, but not silent, but not completely silent part of the audio. And so this 42-minute audio could be compressed in something like 35 minutes, but without pauses or 1 second pauses. And the transcription was very, very fast. But doing this kind of computation, there were a lot of losing the initial prompt. And as of today, now it's something like November 25 or 26, there's no solution for this kind of problem. And so the only way to not having large blocks of text is to force Transcriber, my app, I don't know how the other apps works, to split the sentences after a certain amount of characters or words. There is no word truncated between one subtitle and the other, but there's no punctuation marks. And this is something that I hate a lot, because when there are punctuation marks, I think the Transcriber is super powerful, super good. It's, I think, one of the best solutions on the market, if not the best one. But it is my child, and so I'm so proud of it. But when there's no punctuation marks, it crashes. I think that the only solution that comes to my mind is something like use OpenAI GPT 3.5 or 4 or 4.5 to force punctuation. You know, take this block of text, these 200, 400, 500 words, and rewrite them without changing anything, but just adding punctuation marks. But this is something that can cost the user, because OpenAI is not free. I don't know. This is something that yesterday, when I learned this problem, the way Whisper works, it opened my mind, but it made me very, very, very sad, because I don't think there's anything that I can do to prevent this. And so this is a very sad episode of the morning rant, but you know what? I want to be completely honest with you, and to tell what happens and why it happens, and the fact that I'm searching for a solution, but I didn't find one yet. So that's all for today. I arrived to the supermarket. If you liked this video, please put the thumbs up. If you think you have something to say about this problem, if you are an engineer and you have I don't think you can have a solution, but some lateral thinking, I'd appreciate it very, very well if you comment this video, so we can continue this chatting, maybe privately, or even in a new video in which I can explain my further exploration on this problem. If you very, very like this kind of content, please subscribe to this channel and blah, 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 blah. That's all for today. I'm going underground, and so in the darkness, ciao!